Hi, Elif. My name is Ellen, and I'm correcting this essay for you today. I understand your exam is coming up. I thought you said Saturday, so I hope we get this to you in time, and I hope you do well on your exam. Let's take a look at what you've done here. Good citizens, ex-prisoners. Okay. Youngsters should be taught that breaking the law is definitely hazardous, although there is a possibility for lawbreakers after imprisonment to become good citizens. I shall examine in this essay why I am opposed to accepting them as a person to teach teenagers related to this issue. All right, this is pretty good. There are a couple of things that I would change. For example, this is probably not the most precise word you could have used. Breaking the law is definitely hazardous. Um, it's just not the most precise word. You could have said is dangerous. You could have said that breaking the law has consequences that follow you throughout life. But to call it hazardous, as I said, it's just not really precise. We wouldn't really use that word. Now, this next sentence was nice, but it was really long. And I'm wondering if maybe you could have broken it down. And there are a couple of reasons for that. The first reason is that when you create a long sentence, it's very easy to kind of lose the meaning. And so the reader is like, wait a minute, what? Sometimes has to read it twice. The other reason why I suggest this is because the longer your sentences are, the more likely it is for there to be a mistake. So this went into the third line, and so I'm thinking that pretty much if a sentence goes into the third line of text, you've probably made it too long. So I would have broken this down. Okay. Um, Maybe you could have done something like this. So yeah, and even some of the phrasing was a little strange, like lawbreakers after imprisonment to become good citizens. This phrase for me felt a little strange. So, yeah, you know what? It's partially it's vocabulary essentially. The word you wanted was ex-convicts, former prisoners. Yeah, ex-convicts is probably the best word here. Um, yeah, ex-criminals, former criminals, ex-convicts. Any one of these would have been better. It would have been a better phrase than this. So why don't we try that? Although there is a possibility for ex-criminals to become good citizens without this A, I shall examine in this essay why I'm opposed to accepting them as a person to teach teenagers related to this issue. Okay, it's better, but I still think you could have made it a little clearer and not so wordy. Let me show you what I mean. You said, I shall examine. You've got prepositional phrase in this essay. And then you've got another phrase, why I am opposed to accepting them as a person to teach teenagers. Really? Okay, so it's a lot of these like little um, chunks, and it's just not a sentence that flows easily. All right, because you've got a lot of this structural language here. So maybe you could have done something like this. And before I tell you what I'm suggesting, I want to point something else out. It says the best people. They're the best people. So it's not enough to just say why we shouldn't allow them to do this, but the essay is asking you something far more specific. So you could have mentioned that in your sentence here. So let's try it one last time. So although there is a possibility for ex-criminals to become good citizens, comma, um, I shall examine, and I wouldn't even say in this essay, it's kind of implied. So I shall examine why they are not ideal to teach teenagers. Um, let's see. Why they are not ideal to teach teenagers about crime, or why they are not ideal to dissuade teenagers from entering a life of crime. That also would have been good. Okay, so those are just some ideas about how you can make this feel a little more natural, flow a little better without all these little like structural pieces here. Okay, all right, let's keep going because we talked quite a bit about your introduction. To begin with, once an individual gets into a bad way, such as burglaries, pickpocketing, and more seriously, murdering, all right, comma here, and I would have put a comma here too, it is not easy to escape those characteristics, get rid of with. This is because of the social status and domestic backgrounds, okay, comma, which, comma here, tempered with daily situations, comma, create the personality of the offenders. For example, an adult raised in a family with domestic violence would have aggressive emotions whenever encountered with unwanted problems in life, such as simple arguments between colleagues. Okay, here there's a couple things. Again, I'm finding your commas lacking, but another thing is you want to be careful with this kind of absolute language. What you want to do instead is you want to hedge. And by hedge, I mean you don't want things to sound so absolute. Like you need to leave this possibility that maybe there's another side, another perspective. Okay, so let me show you what I mean. Not they would, but they could have aggressive emotions whenever, this was strange for me, encountered, whenever faced with unwanted problems in life, comma, such as simple arguments between colleagues, okay? Even after leaving prison, comma, they may not be the right person to advise the teenagers. Okay, good. Therefore, ultimately, people who have psychological and social troubles carry them for a lifetime. Okay, so what you're telling us here is that they develop personalities and characters that continue with them their entire life. So even if the behavior has changed, those characteristics do not, and so they're not the best people. Okay, fair, fine. I just want to make sure I understand your central idea here. Secondly, education is a serious area that any conversation, what? Education is a serious area that any conversation would have been analyzed seriously. All right, this is unclear. There's something missing. I feel like there's a word missing, or yeah, I don't understand what you mean here. This is because any words from offenders could be misunderstood easily by young listeners rather than teachers or lecturers' lessons. For example, if they mention pickpocketing to help them in order to feed their children, it would form a sympathy to make their guilty attempt justified. It is therefore clear that conversations with those prisoners might not be informative as well as unnecessary. Okay, I still feel that this is unclear. I think I know what you're trying to say. You're trying to say that teachers or lecturers would be better, but I'm not entirely clear why. So I feel like number one, this needed more development. And you can even see it's shorter than this paragraph. So that's another clue for you that maybe you needed to go a little further into this. But the first sentence for me created problems because this introduces your central idea. And for me, your central idea wasn't clear. Like I had no idea what you meant about education. And then you talked about their language being misunderstood. And then, so I think you needed to go one step further. I think you definitely needed another sentence for explaining this. Something like, therefore, an attempt to dissuade youngsters from crime could easily be misconstrued as could be easily misconstrued as a justification for criminal activities, leading children not to avoid such acts, but instead to pursue them. All right, so I just feel like it needs something a little more here. But then again, I don't understand how education fits into this. So the central idea of this is not clear, and that's a coherence and cohesion issue. And it's partially because I feel like something was missing grammatically. So you can see how the problems in this paragraph include task achievement because it needed a little more development to really make your point clear. It needed a little more coherence and cohesion because it's not clear to me how education is linked to this whole discussion, if I've understood your idea correctly. And then there's some sort of grammatical thing that's missing here that would have linked this all together. Okay, so you can see how all these things are kind of intertwined. All right. To conclude, teenagers have a lot to gain. No. Teenagers have a lot of information to gain. There's something happening with your syntax here. Let's try it one more time. To conclude, teenagers have a lot to gain information about committing a crime from their educators rather than a prisoner. All right, let's try that again. To conclude, teenagers can gain a lot of information about committing a crime from their educators rather than a prisoner. All right, so that makes it grammatically okay. Here's the problem with this conclusion. You never really talked about educators. You mentioned them super briefly here, okay? But you never actually developed how educators would be a better choice here. Now, here's the interesting thing about this. I think that that would have been a really good paragraph to develop because it says to you, they're the best people to talk to teenagers about crime. So I think it would have been very appropriate to say, no, I don't think prisoners are the best people to talk to youngsters about crime because prisoners have A, B, C, D, E problems, okay? Even if they are reformed. Instead, I believe educators would be the ideal people because they have this, they have that, they have the other thing, et cetera, et cetera. So that for me would have been a very good essay. So you're very clear in answering the question. You're saying, no, they are not the best people. Instead, I think educators are the best people. And so that would have been a great way to do this. Okay. However, here, you mentioned educators in your conclusion, but you really should have done more of that here. In other words, your conclusion shouldn't introduce new information. You very briefly talked about educators here. You should have done more with that, okay? Especially if you were going to talk about it in your conclusion. Okay? Let's see. Okay, so Elif, I just read the rest of your note in the essay. I didn't want to, put it in the video, but let me give you a little feedback because I understand your frustration. I see some good things in your writing, but I think there are a number of things you need to do. As you can see in this correction today, I pointed out a number of things that I think could be better. Task achievement is one of them. Coherence and cohesion is another one. And then there were some grammatical things which weren't super problematic, but just the other two alone could create some problems and keep you from getting that 7. Okay. There were some issues with vocabulary. All right, we definitely talked about those. They were fairly consistent. Let's see. And also, I wouldn't say there was enough like more precise and more higher level vocabulary that would make this warrant a 7. Okay, so I know your exam is today, and I hope the feedback that I'm giving you today gives you a sense of where you are and also what you need to do. I hope your exam today goes great, and I hope it gets you that 7. But if for some reason it doesn't, let's meet back and let's talk about how we can work together to help you get there. Okay? So great luck today. I hope it goes perfect, and let me know. Okay? Good luck.